Hey guys, my name's Sam and today I'm going to share with you what it takes to climb, to summit and to prepare for Mont Blanc. Let's go. So after a short flight from Heathrow into Geneva, we then had a transfer from Mont Blanc guides. Met up with a few other climbers and then we headed down to Chamonix. Now, this is my first look at Mont Blanc and I was shocked to see how big this mountain actually was. And there's a saying from Bear Grylls that I'll never forget, and that's that you can never tell how big a mountain is until you're either standing at the bottom of it looking up or at the summit looking down. Okay guys, let's get into it. Now, from the transfer from Geneva to Chamonix, it kind of took us direct into the middle of Chamonix, which was fantastic. From there, I had no idea where I was going. So luckily I was able to jump on Wi-Fi, I got the maps up, and it was fantastic actually, because it was kind of like a little private lodge area tucked up a back street. So you had your own kind of private area where you can unpack. I was shown to my room. The actual hostess of the chalet, if I can call it, was there. She showed me my room, which was kind of up like a real tight staircase area, and then it was split into two, so it was like a loft area. It was really cool anyway, it worked perfectly. I went up to my accommodation, settled in, got my stuff unpacked, and then from there I headed out into Chamonix town to have a look, to have an explore, and to see exactly what was around me, and get a feel for where I'm going to be for the next week. Now, as beautiful as Chamonix is, it's a great place, but one thing is everything's super expensive. Chamonix is full of luxury shops, luxury restaurants, it's full of climbing shops, full of outdoor shops, so there is plenty of opportunity to go out while you're there prior to your trip and pick up any small bits and bobs that you've forgotten ready for the trip. But it's definitely expensive, and I would recommend buying as much as possible, if not all of your gear, before you go. Right, point number 2. Arguably this should have been point number 1, but choosing the right company to take you up Mont Blanc and get you back down the mountain in one piece is important. Now, I climbed Mont Blanc with Mont Blanc guides, and I did a lot of research, jumped on Google, read various different things, jumped on YouTube. Now, as I say, it's super important. And without sounding overdramatic, you are putting your life in the hands of these guides, and you are also spending a week away, and you want to be as comfortable as possible. When choosing the right company, do your research and read reviews and do everything you can really to look this company up. I would definitely recommend Mont Blanc guides, having been there. The facilities are good. Their planning's good, their organisation's good, and their guides are fantastic. So, big shout out to Mont Blanc guides. I would recommend them, and I would recommend having a look into Mont Blanc guides prior to your trip. Right, point number 3, teamwork. Now, on day 1, Mont Blanc guides give you a great opportunity to meet the guides, to sit round the table at dinner, introduce yourself one by one, explain the reasons why you're there, why you're wanting to climb the mountain, and it's a great ice-breaking exercise, and you get to know your team and your buddies who you're going to be climbing with pretty quickly. You're spending a lot of time with these guys. You're sleeping in bunk beds, you're sleeping in small huts, so it doesn't take long to get to know your team. Step number 4, acclimatization. Now, Mont Blanc is 4,809 meters high, so it's high. It's a good sized mountain. So unless you're ultra fit and you live at altitude, going from Chamonix town, which is already at altitude, to the summit of Mont Blanc, you are going to feel it. 100% you're going to feel it. So what Mont Blanc guides do, or what I think a lot of the other guiding companies do, is they organise a trip for us to go and climb a neighbouring peak over in Italy. I think it's Italy's highest peak, called Gran Paradiso. Now, I can't remember the exact altitude of Gran Paradiso, but it was high enough, it was technical enough to prepare the body, and also to give us technical experience climbing on glaciers, climbing with crampons, ice axes, and also get us used to speed. The speed we need to be traveling at to climb these mountains, which was great. So yeah, it gave us a great opportunity to put the lungs under pressure and get into the mountains. Right, step 5, let's talk accommodation. Let's talk huts up on Mont Blanc. So, one thing you've got to remember is you are sleeping at altitude. So you're sleeping in these, what they call refuges, where the only true way to access it is either on foot or by helicopter. And that's what they do a lot of the time. To restock these refuges, you will see, when you're there, you'll see a constant supply of helicopters coming in and out, especially lower down on Mont Blanc, at the Tete Rousse, I think it was, the Tete Rousse hut, where they were doing supplies back and forth, topping up bits and bobs. So yes, you will see helicopters on your way up, going up and down, doing rescues, doing restocks, doing supplies to the huts. Now, accommodation in the huts is basic. Just bear that in mind. Do not forget that. When you're sleeping in these huts, you are sleeping in bunk beds. You are sleeping in beds that are joined very tight together to other people. So if you're not someone that's good with that type of stuff, I would probably recommend getting used to it, because there's no way around it unless you camp, which I saw a couple of people doing next to the Goutte hut up top. So it is possible to camp, but you've got to remember, if you're sleeping in the huts, at least you've got a stable roof over your head, and a little bit of warmth. Now, when it comes to sleeping in these places, one thing you've got to bear in mind is when you're climbing mountains, you're very much governed by the weather, which means you have people setting off at all types of hours of the day. So you could have people heading for the summit at 2 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock. Every hour of the day you can imagine people are moving. So I would take earplugs. I would take eye masks, because you will hear people snoring. You will hear people going to the toilet at 2 o'clock in the morning. So one thing you've got to think of is sleep does not exist when you're up in these huts. You'll be lucky, especially on summit morning, if you get half an hour's worth of sleep. There is too much going on around you to get a full 8-hour peaceful night's sleep. It just does not happen. So that's one thing you need to accept whilst you're up on the mountain, is sleep is a no-no. Food is very, very basic. You do get meals in certain huts. I remember we got meals when we were over on over in Italy on that mountain. The food's very basic, so it is normally kind of schnitzel type, bread, a lot of that type stuff. Food that can generally keep for longer periods of time. A lot of dried stuff. If you are a lover of food like myself, having learnt the lesson, I would really consider taking ration packs. Expedition Foods in particular, they make some really, really nice meals. It's just having that extra amount of luxury to be able to add to the trip, because you're not sleeping, you're not showering, you're not washing. So to be able to have good food, top up the energy levels, is just a great morale boost. So take ration packs. The huts supply boiled water, so that's generally not an issue. They should just be able to supply you with, a top up on your ration pack or whatever. Or if you want to carry a little stove, you can just go and melt snow and prepare your ration pack. When you're in these huts, bottled water, you got to remember most of the water up there is bottled. Yeah. If you're buying bottled water, it costs a fortune when you're up in the mountains. You get like the 1.5 litre type bottles. We're talking, from memory, I think it was like 15 euros or something like that, something high like that. Now, you kind of don't have a choice, but it's just one of those things that I just want to put out there just to let you guys know, not to be shocked, that water does cost a lot of money when you're in these huts. So does snacks, chocolates, anything like that they sell, any of the basics costs a lot of money. Going back to the sleep side of staying in these huts, it might be a good idea as well to take like an inflatable pillow, just to try and maximize your comfort as best as possible, because everything is stripped back. You've got no showers as well, washing when you're on the trip, when you're in the mountains. It's very unlikely that you're going to have a time to have a full wash when you're staying in these places, and be places that actually have washing facilities. Very unlikely. So take wipes, body wipes. I know you can get shampoo leaves, stuff like that. Just be prepared to not shower and to not have a proper wash for a good few days at least. Going to the toilet. Going to the toilet when you're in the mountains is not always the easiest, especially when facilities are basic and facilities are tight. So what I experienced at the huts were what I would refer to as long drop toilets, where you are, especially with the Goutte hut, which is the higher one on Mont Blanc, is that you go to the toilet and your waste basically gets taken back down the mountain on a conveyor belt. It's pretty crazy, but it's a great system considering where you are. So the conditions in terms of toilet facilities are pretty unpleasant. They're not nice at all, so be prepared for that. Again, if you're someone that likes your luxuries and stuff like that, cleaning facilities at that type height for toilets and stuff, just because of the sheer amount of people staying in these places, it is difficult to, I can imagine, difficult for the staff to keep on top of this this type of stuff. So be prepared for that. Your boots, you take your boots off and you leave them in like a communal boot storage area for obvious reasons. You don't want to be bringing boots, bringing water through into the huts. So you leave your boots. Now, one thing you got to bear in mind is there are a very few leading brands that make B3 style mountain boots. Generally Scarpa or La Sportiva. Now, you can imagine going into these huts and you've got 100 pairs of Scarpa B3 orange mountain boots in front of you. It's almost impossible to identify your boots. So as a tip, I would say name your boots, put a tag on the inside, tie something onto your laces, do whatever you can, but identify your boots, put your name on them, because that is the last thing you want to be losing when you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning to head to the summit. Let's talk about the route. So the route we took, there's multiple routes up Mont Blanc. The route we took was the Goûter route, which I believe is the most popular route up Mont Blanc. It's the most accessible and most popular. There's two main huts on the Goûter route on the way up. I think you've got the Tête Rousse and you've got the actual Goûter hut, which kind of looks like a big metal tin circular thing. Tête Rousse is the first one you come across on the way up. That's more like a wooden type structure. And then you've got the Goûter up top, and then you've got like a big wall, like a big rock wall in between the two that you have to climb up. Now, if you're watching this, I'm sure you know about the Grand Couloir. The Grand Couloir for me was definitely a concern. It was something that was on the mind, and it only takes you to jump on YouTube, type in Mont Blanc, and it will come up with the Grand Couloir. The Grand Couloir is a narrow gully that if you are climbing this route, you have to cross, and it's prone to rockfall throughout the year. So these are big rocks that come shooting down the gully. And again, you can find these videos on YouTube if you want to watch. It's up to you. There used to be a line going across the Grand Couloir that you clip into, but it got destroyed by rocks. So when you're on the mountain, you're always roped in. You're roped into your guide. You're not clipped into the mountain. Just remember that. There's no fixed lines on Mont Blanc. So crossing the Grand Couloir, I remember our guide said you normally cross it quite early because everything's a lot harder, everything's a lot more frozen, and the rocks are more stable. Our guide made it, he kind of made the atmosphere very relaxed. So he and other guides as well were telling us to keep quiet, keep our heads down and move quick. And it also pays to get up early to be one of the first ones across the Grand Couloir just before everything starts heating up. So no issues there. We made it over in one piece, luckily, because I know some people haven't, and unfortunately quite a few people have perished on that section. We got lucky. So you make it across the Grand Couloir, and then you've got this face, this big face that goes from the Tête Rousse all the way up to the Goûter hut, and it's rocky. It's quite a technical climb, to be honest, and you've got steel wires that you can kind of hold on to. They don't pull you in. You're not fully attached to them. Nothing. You just hold on to it like a handrail. That face you're climbing up takes a good probably 4 or 5 hours to climb. Just remember, if you're climbing that face, you're on a steep face, a rocky face section, you need everything you possibly after. So you need your drinks, you need your food, you need that's pretty much it. Drink and food, you need that stuff accessible, you need that stuff to hand, because there's no stopping on that face. There's just not. You kind of have to deal with it in one push, and you are generally moving to the speed of the quickest climber as well, which is something else to bear in mind. So you move up that face. It's a very wet, very exposed face. So one thing to bear in mind is probably waterproof gloves when you're on the way up there. My hands got absolutely soaked, and you can imagine going up a steep rock face for 5 hours with soaking wet hands, freezing cold. That was definitely a lesson learned the hard way. So waterproof gloves on that are a must, especially if you get cold hands like me. So we got up to the Goûter, we spent a night there, and then this is where the summit push begins. The summit push always starts early in the morning. I think that's the case with a lot of mountains. What time we woke up, I don't remember. I think it was somewhere around 3-4 o'clock, maybe something like that. And the hut was absolutely jam-packed. So you got hundreds and hundreds of climbers getting ready to go for the summit at the same time. So it pays to be early, it pays to wake up early, and it pays to get out. But you don't have to worry about that. The guides will deal with all of that. That's their job, and that's exactly what they do. So we woke up, everything was prepared the night before. As we were told by the guides, everything needs to be ready. You know where everything is in your bag in case you need to grab stuff in the dark, stuff like that. So by this point, you are pretty clued up on how to put crampons on. You're pretty clued up on how to move on crampons, everything else. So you get yourself prepped, get yourself ready, head outside. And the first section from memory of heading to the summit of Mont Blanc from Goutte Hut is a long, snowy, winding climb. It's a long trudge is the way I can describe it. And I think they call it the Boss's Ridge. So you're moving at that time of the morning. You think you're one of the first ones out of that hut. But it's not until you look up and you can see the trail of head torches going up the mountain, you realise where you are in that place. And also where you've got to go. It can be a little bit demoralising when you see the head torches really far away. You know you've got to get there. So it can be quite tough, but you just need to be mentally prepared for that. That you're going to have your head down. It's going to be extremely quiet as well. Not many people are talking. You've got your head down, you're cold, you're just trudging and you're just going. So you need to be prepared mentally for that, for hours and hours. Your head's down. And again, make sure you have your food, your water, everything you need close to you. So we headed up. We again, from what I can remember, we got onto a kind of steep face, which is kind of up close to the top. And at that point, the sun was rising, and I looked down and I could see Chamonix, and it looked tiny. It looked so small. And that's when you realise how big the mountain actually is when you're up the top looking down. So we carried on up. I can't give you the exact hours because I just simply don't remember. But if I was to say 6, 7, maybe 8 hours to get to the top, and then I think it was sort of 4 or 5 to get back down. So we got to the top. Now, on the way to the top, or the last top section, you've got a real narrow ridge that I would basically call the Summit Ridge. As you head up Summit Ridge, there's not a lot of room to pass either side, so it's kind of it's pretty narrow. If you want to pass, you have to kind of step onto the slope section of the mountain, so you're risking it. But that's how you pass, and that's what we did to get down, because as we were coming down, people were coming up still. So we made it onto the summit, and the summit is described as kind of like a whale's back. So it's quite wide and quite long as well. There's quite a lot of room up there. So you haven't got to worry about falling off or feeling unsteady or anything like that, because yeah, you've got a lot of room on that summit. So yeah, so the summit was busy. The summit was absolutely packed, which was a real shame. I mean, the views made it all worth it. So another memory that stands out to me on the top of Mont Blanc is the guides turning around and pointing out the Matterhorn. Now, the Matterhorn is a big, big mountain, but looking at the Matterhorn from the top of Mont Blanc, it looks tiny. You're looking down on the Matterhorn and you can see it poking out just above the clouds. You are up above the clouds when you're standing on the summit of Mont Blanc. It's that high. So we had 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes on the summit, and then we span around and we just hauled arse to get off that summit. We just pushed, and the sun was rising, everything was heating up. And when you're in the mountains, stuff starts to slide, rocks start to drop, and you can hear this all around you when you're up there. So that's one thing to bear in mind, is you can hear rocks sliding, you can hear the cracking, you can hear avalanches. There's a lot going on around you. So it pays to get off the mountain quick. And again, that's something your guide will tell you, so you haven't got to worry about that. But just remember, there's a lot of people up there. There always will be a lot of people up there because it's somewhat an accessible peak. So just bear that in mind. Be ready to move quick. Have the fitness and have the mental stability and stamina to be able to move quick in the mountains, and not allow yourself time to stop, to wait around, to be overtaken. You want to try and avoid that at all costs. So we headed down, we dropped down that face section quite quickly, and then we crossed the Grand Couloir, and at that point I could take a sigh of relief, because once you get past that couloir in the middle of the day, you know you're safe, and everything else beyond that is just a nice slow. It's almost like heading down Snowdon. When you get past the couloir, you've got rocky paths kind of snaking around the mountain, going all the way down, and it gets you back down to the train area. The train then takes you back down to the car park, or kind of like the centre of the town that you set off from. And then that's it. That's job done. You have just climbed Mont Blanc. And it was all celebrations then. So down into Chamonix for a few beers to celebrate and to reflect on what we achieved over the past week. Thank you so much for listening to this video. I hope you could take something out of it, and I hope you could use what I learned up on Mont Blanc for your trip. Happy climbing, stay safe, and enjoy the mountains. And a massive thank you to the team for creating and sharing some great content.